Right, 3, 2, 1. So this is Overcome Out Loud with Charlie Smith. We're talking about real people, real challenges, and real solutions. And today I am really psyched to have my good friend Mike Diamond in studio with me here in Westlake. He drove out to be with us today. Mike, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Mike is an incredible dude and really successful. He's a TV personality known for New York Inc., Bondi Tattoo Crew, which is up for or has been up for Best Reality TV Show. He's a director. He's a coach. Really successful entrepreneur. And a recovering alcoholic and addict who's got coming up on 15 years of continuous sobriety with a great story. And we're going to get into it. And so I'm glad he's here. And you know, what's interesting as we start is I met Mike literally about 4 weeks ago by chance on office hours with Dave Meltzer. And, you know, the connection was instantaneous. And since then, you know, we've developed some really cool opportunities to collaborate together. He's out here potentially working with a new client that we're able to introduce him to. He's coming to work on the executive recovery program. We're introducing his Mind Focus Fuel 2.0 to people in recovery as part of this. And man, it's just great to have made the connection. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's actually great that it was funny because Dave's office hours, they were the guy that booked it said to, oh, you have to get off early. I said, no problem. And then you were the guest. And Dave's like, no, you need to stay on this. This guy's in recovery like you. And it was great. It's the way it works. It's awesome.
It is. It's so great. And so we're going to get into it because you've got a great story. And I think one of the things that I've decided to do in this platform is really so many people that I've gotten to know have such deep stories of overcoming obstacles in their lives, and you know, having overcome so many obstacles from a young age and also in sobriety that, you know, I think there's people that suffer in silence. And so the idea here is to overcome out loud. I mean, the guy that is on top of the mountain definitely didn't get dropped there by a helicopter, right? We walked every step of that mountain. So I know that's not a Texas draw that I'm hearing. So can you start us off a little bit and give us a history of you know, where my man comes from?
Yeah, that's funny you say that because someone the other day asked me if I was from Boston. And I was like, no, not Boston. But I lived in New York 10 years. So I was born in Perth. Perth is geographically the most isolated capital city in the world. So back then, before I came to America, it was the Stone Age. It was before the internet, and it was just me against the world, dreaming big and making a lot of mistakes because I didn't have any good mentors. The environment sucked. The people sucked. Very small-minded, fixed mindset. And like Dave and I say, you're stuck in stupid. You know, so the first part of my life, because it's very interesting to look back on it. I wouldn't change anything. Because it's taught me how to be resilient and how to really focus on what I want and cancel out the noise. Because I was told so many things that were so wrong to who I was authentically and my potential, which caused me to mood alter massively as a young kid. And, you know, when people say, you can't drink or do drugs the first time and get addicted, honestly, bullshit.
Right on.
As soon as I drank, I was like, this is amazing. And as soon as I snorted cocaine, it was over. The only thing I did that I didn't want to do again was heroin. I did it and I just wasn't like, it's not my thing. But any kind of stimulant or upper and alcohol, are you kidding me? I was addicted from the first go.
Because the escape from the pain was so instantaneous. And, you know, let's talk about that because you and I share a lot in common, and a lot of people in recovery or with substance abuse issues have suffered, you know, some kind of trauma as they've grown up. And I think you and I both share that. And you know, I think one of the other things we share is we're not victims of it. We're not looking for sympathy. We don't say it for effect. We say it because it's the truth. And because we want to kind of bring some normalcy to the fact that doesn't necessarily mean we have to continue to write in the pages of our life with our dad's pen or our teacher's pen or the bullies at school. We can take that, as you just described, we can take that pen back. But I think so many people leave the pen in others' hands. Can you tell me a little bit about, you know, what it was like to, you know, kind of go through that kind of abusive upbringing and have experienced some of the trauma and the dyslexia? Again, you know, we talk a little bit, and you talk in your book, which we'll get into, about the inner critic and how, even the teachers with your dyslexia thought they could help you read better by calling you up to the front of the class. But here you are in front of the class with this tremendous inability to actually read like the other kids and being made fun of. I mean, those are traumatic events. So can you tell me, and I think one of the reasons why that escape with drugs and alcohol, as you said, you can become addicted because the escape from that embarrassment, that shame, that guilt is instantaneous, man. You go into a euphoric state and you forget about those things.
Well, it's really interesting when people talk about trauma, because if you're in fight, flight, or freeze at a young age continually. So I go to school and I can't process like other kids, and then everyone laughs at me because I can't really read very well. And then I have to distract myself to try and be the class clown so they don't choose on me. At least I get in trouble and I don't have to read out loud. And then I go home, and then I, cop a hammering from my dad. There's no safe ground.
There's no safe ground.
So never as a child did I feel safe, ever. So when you start to look how the brain functions and the brain develops, the first 25, 26 years, a man's brain, the prefrontal cortex, takes time to develop. But if the primitive part of the brain, the amygdala, is constantly firing and wiring and overdeveloped because of the stimulus from the environment, you don't spend a lot of time in your executive function, your prefrontal cortex. So you're not actually making decisions, you're reacting. You're just reacting to the world. So anything that comes in, and I always say every human being is looking for a dose. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. We're all looking for a dose because they're the happy brains, right? Happy chemicals of the brain. Now, are you going to get an empowering one or a disempowering one? So for me, it wasn't a lot of information. I'm in a small town. There's no internet. I've got no mentors. I didn't have any really good indirect mentors. And an indirect mentor to me is, and I talk about that, is like, you could read Tony Robbins, you could read Wayne Dyer, you could read Viktor Frankl, right? That's an indirect mentor. Wow, what did he do? Let me take those tools and apply it to my life to think greater than my environment. But there wasn't a lot of information. And Australia is not like America. Australia is that thing of like, oh, American, everyone's this, everyone's that. It's very small-minded. Where here, there was a great movement with mindfulness and just mentorship and guru. That doesn't exist in Australia. Oh, you're thinking too big, you're dreaming too big. So I was stuck in this cycle of just like, how do I process this information? And I couldn't. So I just use.
Yeah, and the cycle, as I think both of us know, and people don't understand, the disease is progressive, but you learned a bunch of coping skills as a young man to get through school, to survive your home. And those coping skills, and the resilience you talk about served you. So you got to that clothing store as a young man, and you had certain skills, whether it be personality or the creative side of your brain that took over. And so it's like, while you're still using and numbing out, you've still got these other coping skills. And, we'll get to how it works until it doesn't. And all that stuff was still working for you. You got to the clothing store and had kind of worked yourself past all that, but you're still drinking, you're still using, and you're still kind of using your coping skills to have some success, which keeps you from really identifying with how much the disease is progressing. So talk a little bit about that transition. So, we got to get you here to the States. So you're in Australia, you're working at a clothing store, but you've really got this mindset, this intention of getting over here, right?
Yeah. So after high school, I got through high school. Somehow. The one thing I knew I could do is I could act. So it really came out of nowhere. I was 12 years old, and there was a play. I think it was The Pied Piper, and I didn't want to be in the play because I was very good at sports. I was a track star. I played rugby, played football. I was very good at sports, really good. So that was my out. I was good at sports. He's just bad at school. And there was a performance, and I was in the chorus. And I was just messing around with one of the kids in the chorus. And I could remember, after 2 rehearsals, everyone's lines. So I would just say everyone's lines and joke with him. And then, ironically, everyone gets the flu. So the 2 lead guys are out. And they're like, the production's going to end because no one could remember the lines. And the kid next to me goes, oh, Mike knows everyone's lines. And the teacher goes, what are you talking about? She goes, he knows everyone's lines. She's like, do you know everyone's lines? I said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to dress up in a fancy outfit. It was the Pied Piper. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And she's like, the production, everyone's coming. I think I was 12 years old. And she's like, just don't lie to me. Do you know everyone's lines? I said, yes. She's like, you really know everyone's lines? I said, yeah, I could say the lines now. She's like, how? I said, I don't know. Listen to them. I remember them. So she's like, okay, get up and sing one of the songs. I was like, all right. So I got up and sang it. She's like, it's a musical. She's like, can you do the lines? I said, I told you, I know everyone's lines. I can remember. I was just being a goof. That's the dyslexia. I was photographic in certain areas. So she's like, you've got to play one of the leads. I was like, when? She's like, tomorrow night. So I got dressed up and nailed it. I was like, ooh, I can do this. I can do this. This is my way out. So I got in a band young and I started performing, and I could go to a concert and there was a band called The Angels and watch the whole set and remember the songs and go home. And I said, we'll put a band together and remember, I could remember them all. I don't know. It was that my superpower of like my memory was really photographic. And that's how I left Perth and auditioned for acting school in Sydney. And I couldn't cold read very well because I didn't know I was dyslexic, but improvisation was through the roof. And if you gave me a monologue to learn, it was done. I could learn it real quick, and I was very flexible if you directed me. So I got in, got work, and I would have these moments of sobriety. Like I would get sober, but I didn't understand the progression of the disease. Because if I could go sober for 2 years,
right,
I'll just go sober. But then when I used, it was hardcore. I was smoking crack, but then I could show up to work every day. I never missed a day of work. I never missed acting school. I never missed the gym. I even ate well, but I would go on a binge of cocaine. But it was a controlled drug addict thing. Like, I won't do it during the day, but if I do coke from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning and then go to bed and then get up at 10 and then function like everything's normal, then I can't be a junkie.
See, and this is I think one of the, there's a couple of points here, but one of the points that I think is so important is the congruency or incongruency of our lives and how it erodes our character. So, and that's why we say it works until it doesn't, because you're still leading a double life. You're like, I'm this guy during the day, but I'm this guy at night. And, you know, at some point, you know, pick your example of it. You know, when the two worlds collide, it's an explosion, and you can't sustain, you know, that kind of character erosion, that double life for too long, because you just run out of gas.
And I think, you know, deep down, like I always knew my authentic self, my intuition strong.
Yeah.
Like I never understood, like I go to a meeting or whatever and someone say, oh, my higher power is the chair. And I'm like, what? My higher power is not a fucking chair. Excuse my language. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Like, my higher power is my intuition inside me that guides me. And I've got to listen to that voice. And I would never say, when people say, oh, I just turn the higher power is the room. And I'm like, the higher power is not the room. You need to slow down and listen to your gut and your intuition. And that authentic self that may have been destroyed in your early years, because I always say it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
Do the work.
End of story. And it's work that has no end. It has no end. Yesterday's food will not keep you full today.
That's right.
If you sweep the floor once, guess what? You have a dirty floor.
That's it.
It's continuous every day. It's a grind every day.
And don't you find that consistency is the most difficult part of the recipe for most people? They can see it on paper, they can understand it, enthusiasm's common, but that commitment to consistency is the rarest part of success, isn't it?
You know what you just said, success. Success is simple. Successful people do the work no matter how they feel. Unsuccessful people only want to work when they feel good and they feel right. You're never going to feel good. You're never going to feel right. You have to work to make the feeling happen. And everyone's looking for a white light experience. Once I figured out, what made it easier for me is when I came to this country with nothing, it was great because you end up in New York City against the best. New York will hand you your ass. You know, New York doesn't play. If you can't level up, no one cares.
Next.
Back in 1998, yeah, I was paying $2,700 in an apartment. Like, you know, it was like sink or swim. Are you that good? Let's see what you got. And you had to outwork people. And if you weren't congruent and if you weren't authentic and you couldn't build rapport and you weren't a good person, they chewed you up and spat you out.
Yeah, I've heard the stage don't lie. It's like,
no, exactly. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny you said the stage don't lie. It's like, can you do it? Like when I used to throw events in New York, it was really simple. It was like I would choose the hardest day to throw an event. I would choose a Monday night or a Tuesday because anyone can go out on the weekend, fill the room on a Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
See what you can do.
Yeah.
Can you get people genuinely to show up on a Monday? What can you offer them? And that's how I ended up opening bars. I opened a bar with Scott Weiland. There was nowhere to play, and people would go to like a bar, right? Or go see a band, and they'd empty out the room. And I was like, you know what? There's nowhere to play. I'll create a place. Like, you're crazy. And I was lucky enough to become friends with the singer of the band Fuel, and he introduced me to Scott and Duff. And I said, okay, so let's get the biggest rock stars on the smaller stage, but let's do it like this. Let's do a DJ that plays rock and roll music, put the band on in the middle, and do the after party all in one event. They're like, it'll never happen. Because CBGB's was shutting down, because you'd go to CB's, watch a band, and leave. Like a comedy show. You go to see the comedian, leave. And I was like, I can do it. And we did it. And it was the number one bar in the world at one stage called Snitch. But I had the vision of saying, I'll fill the room myself. I didn't depend on the bands to fill the room. I went around and filled the room myself.
Yeah, and that was the second point, which, you know, and you talk about in your book, which is fantastic. And, you know, what I see consistently in your success, and we're going to get into to how it goes wrong, but you knew who you are. And you were focused on who you were, not who you weren't. You knew that your creative side was a superpower. You knew that you had a gift, and you focused on what you were. I see so many people think the world needs them to be something, and it's not their superpower, and they live striving to be what they're not instead of focusing on who they are. You know, and that, I think, is one of the things that, you know, is so attractive about authentic people is that, you know, once you dealt with the bottom from the drugs and the alcohol, you've taken all of those gifts, those superpowers, and you've just leveled up each of them to say, you know what, this is what I am. I'm good at this. You know, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be a scientist. I'm good at sports, but I'm not going to be a pro basketball. I'm not going to be a center on a basketball team. And that's okay, because I know who I am, and I've focused on those things to expand every single day. You know, and that's, I think, a lot of people get caught in that trap of comparison or focused on what they're not because someone else is, versus the fact that, you know, and George talks about it. You've read his book. He talks about we all have a divine spark, man.
Oh, yeah.
We've all got it.
Well, I think it's inclination more than talent. Yeah. I think people have an inclination, and then it's the work. And if you look at the Renaissance movement, for example, and you look at Michelangelo and Da Vinci, they had masters and mentors at 5 years old. So they say 10,000 hours of intentional training with a focused intention will make you master a skill. And then I put it in my book, and it'll be in my second book as well. When you look at neurons that fire together, wire together, right? So if you've got an inclination to do something and you get the right mentors or you do the right intentional training, you can then self-actualize and reach your potential, because that's all it's about. In life, we just want to reach our full potential. That's it. Be kind, be loving, have a purpose, right? And reach your potential. And that's why when people come to me, you know, that are struggling in recovery, I say, look, the first book you need to read is Man's Search for Meaning. They're like, why? And I said, because if Viktor Frankl can have gratitude and purpose in a Holocaust, you can figure it out.
That's right.
Okay, because even if you're at Pelican Bay and you're on death row, you still get some meals. You're not dealing with Auschwitz. So do you know what I mean? And that's positive psychology. Everyone focuses on post-traumatic stress, but what about post-traumatic growth? Under stress, we grow. We
do, and people don't, you know, it's so important, and that's why I'm so, you know, I'm so focused on bringing people in, and we'll get to the bottom, but this mindset, this mentality, you know, we're so programmed to be able to listen to the negative narrative of other people, but no one tells us, by the way, you can change that narrative. You can train your mind, and you can do things, whether it's a gratitude, you know, an affirmation, an intent. You can train a meditation. There's a practice, but we don't talk about it. We think that, oh, that just must be the way I think, that what Joe thinks about me or what Joe did to me is going to influence who I am. you need to influence you, but no one really gives us a runway, and that's why we'll get into the things that you did to do that.
Here's a question going on that. Here's a perfect example. Okay, so you and I are sitting here, and in reality, yesterday is dead. Right?
For sure.
I can never change yesterday. So there's a famous saying, the time will change, but the place remains the same. So I can never get back the moments in this chair, but I can come back tomorrow and sit in this chair. Okay, so every moment matters. Now, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's no guarantees, right? I've laid on a deathbed and nearly died.
You have.
Okay, so they say the average American lives to around 80 years old. So if you take 80 from your age, that's how many summers you got left. That's reality.
That is.
Right, with no guarantees that tomorrow's around.
No.
Okay, so we know we've gathered a certain amount of information from the past, from our environment, from food, from our sensory, right? That's brought me to this moment. And that's allowed me to manifest my reality to this moment. So if I ask you right now, what's the worst movie you've ever seen in your life? Do you have a movie that really you don't like, or a song? Is there something?
Let's see. The worst movie I've ever seen, I think, was recently the Godzilla movie.
Perfect.
With Bryan Cranston in it, who checked out of the movie really early. It was so bad. I think he died in the first 20 minutes.
Right. So Godzilla, right? Okay. So yesterday is a movie, a memory of the past. Right?
For sure.
You got to see it in your memory to see it, correct?
For sure.
So if yesterday was Godzilla and it sucked, and I asked you to watch Godzilla from now for the rest of your life, you'd be like, that's dumb. Why would I watch that movie again? Okay. So why would you fire and wire the same negative situation you can't change over and over again?
Because no one tells you can change it. And
there you go.
And that's it. You're so right, man.
So you stop the tape.
You do.
So I tell people, get amnesia from the bullshit and yesterday. Focus on what you want, because what you focus on expands. And then be willing to do the work and pay the price to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be. And that's it. Because if you're prepared to do the work, I am living proof. I just do the work. No matter how I feel, I just show up. 99% of it is showing up and being humble. And I'll do the work. I scrub my own toilets. I don't care. Why? Because it humbles me for the times where I thought I had everything and I was making $5-6 grand a night, blowing most of it up my nose. Do you know what I mean? Saying everyone owes me something because I was abused as a kid. No, bullshit. No one owes me anything.
That's the thing. We become the authors of our life. So you came out here. You got the green card, man. You got the lottery. Great story being in the clothing store and making a connection with a lady and getting a green card. And you come out here to New York and things are looking good for you when you got out here. You created a life for yourself, no?
I did, but the problem was it was and it goes back because I've gone into my past so deeply and done a lot of work, which would be one of my favorite people that if you ever struggle with toxic shame or the family is John Bradshaw.
Yeah.
He has 3 incredible books, The Homecoming, Healing the Shame That Binds Us, and The Family. I've done a lot of inner critic work and shame work, and because I would overwork, accumulate a lot of things, but not work on myself. So I thought when I arrived, I'd feel better. So if it was a TV show or this, but it would never feel the whole.
Yeah, I think this is an important point for people to understand. That self-identity is a bit of a barometer. So it's like what you thought about yourself, that you brought here was like, if I could achieve, then, but without changing the identity, without changing your belief of who you are, you level right back down to that kind of low self-esteem, kind of insecurity, that kind of egomaniac with an insecurity complex who's like, I'll achieve my way out of this. And we can achieve, but all of a sudden it doesn't fill the hole. And so you're still relying on the drugs and the coke to fill that hole because there's that incongruency. I can achieve, I can have success, I can get this TV show, I can land this deal, I can sell these tickets, I can open this club, but I still don't like who I can't pass the mirror test.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing for people to understand. I think that's why, for me, the one thing that I never understood and people would talk about, but they never went deeper is like, they would say, oh, when you get sober, it'll change your life. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? Like, just it'll change your life. And what it means to me is this. When you spend enough time with yourself in sobriety and you do the work and you do not mood alter no matter how you feel or what happens, your life will change because you're making sober decisions. So when I go through stomach surgery or I face a lawsuit or the IRS sends me a note, instead of drinking over dumb things, I sit with it and I have a process. I pay my taxes. I call a lawyer. Do you know what I mean? I show up for people. That's what people can't get in their heads. They're like, oh, but this is going on in my life. And if you focus not on why it's happening, but how you can grow, you'll never use. But if you focus on, oh, poor me, like the pandemic, and I'm going to be straight up honest, has been the greatest for me. It really has.
For sure.
I wrote a new book. I got the cover of Recovery Today magazine. Rob and I decided to create the podcast. I did a show with Dave Meltzer. I did a podcast. Now we're doing a show. I lost the 250 speaking gigs. I created a supplement, right? All because of the pandemic. None of that would have happened because you know why? I would have been comfortable on the first book, doing 200 speaking gigs this year, and I wouldn't have got out of my comfort zone. So people get upset with the pandemic, right? And they say, we've been told to go inside. Well, let me break that down for you. You've been told to go inside yourself. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
When people say they don't want to spend time with their thoughts, well, who's supposed to spend time with your thoughts if you don't want to spend time with them? So people need to do the spiritual work. And like I said the other day, and I think you mentioned it on when I was running, someone said to me, did I see the social dilemma? And I said, I don't have an issue with social media. It's a spiritual dilemma.
That's right. You did. I remember it well. I couldn't agree more, man.
Do you know what I mean? Spiritually, we've lost ourselves with our devices. I mean, look, I went from one end of Sunset Boulevard the other day to my house in Glendora, which is like 38 miles, at 3:45 in the afternoon, which is supposed to be rush hour, and did it in an hour where I'd usually do it in 3 hours. So, okay, there's no problem with the traffic right now because people are remote. I don't have an issue with it. And I'm not being a dick. I'm just being honest. Like, this is what everyone's going through it. It's not a personal pandemic. It's a global pandemic.
And there's slivers of opportunity for all of us.
There's always opportunity.
There's hope, right? Hope
There's
is just
always there, but everyone wants to focus on poor me. It's that victim mentality, and we have to remove that. Because if I'm in victim mode, I attack. That's why someone got upset with me the other day. Goes, well, what's your this? I go, I don't argue on politics. That's your opinion. I'm not going to fight your opinion. If that's what, through your perceptual filters, if that's
your
how
movie.
You see it, then that's okay with me. But stay out of my lane. Do you know what I mean? Don't get in my lane. And that's where people need to step back. We have so many issues right now and so much conflict because we're churned up inside. We're angry. But what are we angry at? Seriously.
It's a great question. Whatever we put our focus on, we could be angry at, or we could be grateful if we put our focus on all the gifts that are there. We still have children. We still have relatives. We still have businesses. We still have friends. We still have the outside. We can hide. I mean, there's things we can do, Okay, so you can't, go to the movies with your kid, color with them, go to the beach with them. It's either what we can or what we can't. And you and I think both understand the benefits of focusing on what we can really does fill our spirit and motivates us greatly.
Charlie, people say that they can't do certain things or they're afraid. I go, okay, it's very simple. Time, money, and resources. People say they never have enough time. And then when I break down their day, I'm like, you're wasting time. You wasted 24 hours scrolling through crap and worrying about other people's things, right? Money's simple. If I bring value to you, you will pay me.
Simple.
If you can be of service and bring value to another human being, you're recession proof.
That's it.
Okay? Resources. Be resourceful. I wrote a whole book on my phone.
Truth, by the
Because
way.
there's a Word document. I created a Word document on my iPhone, and I go from my phone to my iPad. I didn't have to have the perfect, iconic, sense-burning. I go out, run 10 miles, and I write. Everyone's looking for this. Well, when I get to it doesn't exist. It's like people want the trophy, but no one wants to train. You can run a marathon barefoot like a Kenyan if you want to run a marathon. But people don't want to get the blisters on their feet. I've got to have the perfect shoe from Nike. No, you don't.
You don't.
People send me information all day. It's like, how do I lose weight? I'm like, cut out your calories and run or do some exercise. Yeah, but you're already done. You put a but in there.
That's it. Math. Calories in, calories burned.
You put a but in there, right?
Yeah.
You're already done. How do I get sober? It's simple. Don't use. Yeah, but.
And there's a set of behaviors
Yes.
that go along with getting in shape, with getting sober, with staying sober, with writing a book. And none of them have to do with how you feel. I mean, the feelings will fuck with all of us. But if you just go ahead and do the things that people that write books, get in shape, get sober do, and everybody there's a path to all of that stuff. If you get behind those behaviors, regardless how you'll write a book, you'll get in shape or you'll get sober.
It's actually you know what made it easy for me? When I just I go to the source. So when I say that is if I see you do something and it's when I studied neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, I model your behavior. So when I went to meetings and there was a guy in there with 20 years and I had 20 days, I was like, well, what's he doing? He's got 20 years.
Right
I'm
on.
not listening to the guys with 20 days.
Success leaves
I
clues.
went straight to the
Yes.
guy with 20 years. I said, what do you do? He's like, how many meetings? He goes, do 3 meetings a day. I didn't question it. No problem. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't go to the guy with 20 years and then he'd tell me something and go, yeah, but. I was like, okay, now what do I do? What are you reading? Are you reading more books? Well, what are the books? I found out CEOs read a book a week. Okay, how do I read a book a week? I sat down and I timed how many words I read a minute as a dyslexic. I said, okay, I can get through a book a week if I read an hour to an hour and a half a day. That's it. I'm reading an hour and a half a day. I read a book a week.
And if you didn't read an hour and a half a day, would you get through a book a week?
No. So what do I do? It's that, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
It was that simple. And to me, I was like, well, I'm going to create a supplement. I'm going to go to someone with a supplement company. And I don't have that fear of asking. And that's where people need to understand. I went to a guy named Sam who has a huge supplement company. And I said, I've got an ingredient. I know it'll work. It's what I've used to heal myself. Can you help me? Didn't question me. What happens? Now I've got a supplement company. But people say, aren't you afraid to sell it? I go, what do you mean? I'll go knock on doors and sell it. That's the problem. People don't want to knock on doors. They don't believe. They want someone else. Well, I've got it now. It should just move. How's it going to move?
Yeah, I think that's I think the entitlement epidemic of we can get food fast, we can stream a movie fast, we should be able to get success fast. And I think everything that we've done and been successful at, it's like it's got a start and it's got work associated with it and it's effort. And next thing you know, it's successful, but it starts with the work and it takes patience and it takes persistent pursuit. But there's no hack to the deal. There's no okay, once in a while a video goes viral and someone's, but that's if you keep chasing that, you'll be chasing that forever. It's like I say, it's like the boost button on a video game. You push it, you get really fast for a little bit of time, but then it's gone. It's not long lasting. Whereas persistent pursuit of a passion and a belief is, you can keep it.
It's like a great thing you just said, Dan. And I think the disservice people get is, and I love it now, you can't break me. I've suffered too much as a kid. I've gone through too much. I've gone through so much stuff that I just can go. I'm not afraid to die. I just go. I will put it on the line every day. So, because I'm used to pain and pain doesn't bother me. I can sit in it long. So I can delay that much gratification if I believe I can do something. That people say to me, how do you get it done? I said, I just sit in the process. I'll figure it out. I will just, and I don't, so the way I talk to myself is opposite to the way I was spoken to. I give myself time to figure it out. Whereas a kid, I was given no time and screamed at. I never scream at myself. I never scream at my son. I don't scream at people because everyone's just doing the best with the information they have. Do you know what I mean?
I
So
do.
if
It's
I
so
work
true.
with someone that's struggling and they're making bad choices, I've made bad choices, so I sit them down and I match them and I try to identify with them, and then I try to lead them into better habits slowly to the way they process information. And do I get people sober? Yes. Do they stay sober? Yes. Why? Because I give people a chance to process. I don't bully them into the process. I lead them into the process. I kind of look up. And there's a big difference. I go out and do it every day. So it's not like I'm bullshitting people.
That's right.
I drop the hammer every day.
It's not some petri dish experiment. Maybe you could try this into work. It's like, you want what I have, you do what I do.
If I run 10 miles a day and meditate and get up at 4 a.m. and do the work, and look, when people say, like guys like David Goggins, who I love, they're like, what do you think of him? I said, the reason I like Goggins is because he's famous for his failures, not his successes. He failed SEALs 3 times. That's amazing. Right. I love him. I love him because he does the work. He's not fancy, and he works.
Did he get the pull-up record the first time he tried it? No.
But that's why, and I love, and that's the beauty of him telling the truth. He's authentic. He's not claiming to get it right. He's claiming to do the work.
Well, I mean, my mantra, which I think is the epitome of congruency, is the simple question to ask yourself: is what I want consistent with what I do? Plain and simple. You don't have to want a 6-pack, but don't say you want one and then don't do ab exercises and eat healthy. Just say, I don't really want one.
Yeah.
I really don't want to be sober, because if you want to be sober, then there's a set of behaviors that go along with it you're not willing to do or interested in doing. So don't say you want to be sober. It's congruency that ultimately is the test. It's like, you either are doing the things that are consistent with what you want, or they're not. You have to answer that question.
And you know what? It's funny you say that, and it's so simple. Like, if you really break it down, and I say, I've chosen to use over a period of time, and I don't feel good. For me, it was spiritual. It wasn't money. I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I used to enjoy doing cocaine. I never got hungover. I could drink all night and do things. I'm like, I don't enjoy it anymore. I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to do it. I've learned my lessons. And that's why I think everyone's rock bottom is different. No one can be dragged or told. You have to know deep down. That's why if you don't get the first step right in any recovery, you're done. You have to surrender. You
do. And I'll tell you that you and I share that similarity. And I think people will say relapse is part of recovery. I think relapse is part of addiction for sure. But in my experience, relapse isn't part of recovery. If you're in recovery, actively working a program of recovery, relapse isn't part of that. It is a very, very significant part of active addiction, which means I'm not doing anything to change myself. I'm not engaged in those behaviors. I say I'll quit. I quit for a while, 1, 2, 3 months, 3 years, but I'm not really engaged in any of the behaviors that go along with maintaining with sobriety. I'm still living a double life, and I'm still living incongruently. Ultimately, the pain gets worse. You're going to pick up a drink again. Correct. So relapse is definitely part of addiction, but not necessarily part of recovery.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I think, look, if you really break it, right? So either I'm pumped on adrenaline and I've got too big an ego and I think I can get away with it, I'll use, right? Too much pleasure, well, let me keep this going. Or I'm suffering too much and I don't want to reach out and talk to someone about my suffering and pain, I'll use. Okay? If you're in the middle and you're dealing with the process of your emotions, why should you mood alter? There's no reason, right? So if I look at my resentments and I look at my fears and I look at those disempowering, it's that great, and George talks about it in his book, about which wolf are you going to feed.
That's right.
Right? If you're feeding the disempowering, there's too much cortisol pumping through the body, right? So when you're in your sympathetic nervous system too long and you can't get back into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, you have to mood alter, because the cortisol is pumping through your body and the dopamine, the serotonin, and the oxytocin is dropping. So if you look at it really simple, right? If I listen to something positive, I'm going to get a spike of dopamine or something going on in the brain. If I call someone, it's going to give me oxytocin from community, right? If I do something for someone else, it actually spikes serotonin. and oxytocin. So if I go out on myself, and that's why when I first started talking about my recovery, right? A lot of people said, don't do it. Because I was working as a sober coach and I had to go out on my own because a lot of the companies I was working with doing a lot of, I was never talking about my clients, but I was like, I smoke crack. I did crazy stuff. I have no problem with it. People said, don't do that. Don't do that. No, it's anonymous. I said, no. I'm not in a meeting. And if I go to a meeting, they can be anonymous. I don't have to be anonymous. I can say whatever I want. No, and that annoyed me because people are like, don't do that. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. Because you know what? When I was using, everyone called me out. So now when I'm sober, I can't tell people I'm sober?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think the disease of alcoholism and addiction is, there's such a stigma around it because people won't actively talk about what it looks like, what it feels like. That's what we're doing here is, how you do this, and what recovery looks like and what recovery doesn't look like. Those are important topics. And, you came out here and you hit your bottom and you decided to make some changes. And, what I want people to know is there's a set of, no matter what you're going through right now, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's a learning disability, that people like you and I, who come from very, very small, humble beginnings, have overcome these things. And when you guys are able to see this, live, you'll see my man is a beast, and he's not just overcome the weight of drugs and alcohol. I want to just, before we wrap up, I want to talk about 2017, because you're sober a bunch of years when all hell breaks loose for you. I mean, your ability to draw on the behaviors that and the persistent pursuit of the values that you have really came to a crossroads for you, and you had to decide which way you were going to live in 2017. So let's talk about that. You're back fulfilling your dreams. You're sober a bunch of years, and shit, your appendix burst, man. You get some bad pain.
Yeah, so it was actually my birthday. So here's a crazy story. My best friend is born the same day as me, June 14th. And he's like, let's go to the desert in Nevada, shoot some guns, a boys' weekend. And I sit down for a day, and my stomach was a little off because I have ulcerative colitis. And my wife said, you should go, you never go away. And I'm like, I just don't want to go. I should stay near the home. She said, okay, because she's pregnant. So I wake up, and she surprises me, and she says, I found out the sex of the baby for your birthday. I said, great. She's like, we're having a baby boy. I was excited, but I'll be honest, I wanted a baby girl. I'll tell you why. So when he gets to 16, he's going to try and arm wrestle me with a girl. She'll be like, Daddy, I love you. Girls don't leave. Boys leave.
It's true.
That's just the truth. So I'll be honest with you. I wanted a little girl. I want a daddy's girl, right? Because I can protect my little daughter. I knew I'd have a savage. So that night, that day, I went and did a bunch of pull-ups like a maniac, and my stomach wasn't good, and I was struggling. We went for dinner, and she's asleep in bed, so I didn't want to wake her, and I was on the couch, and I was really having trouble with my stomach, and it's been off for a couple of days. So when you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, they call it flaring, which means when your stomach's off, you have diarrhea. So I went to the bathroom, and I didn't have diarrhea. So I was like, oh no, it's not my colitis. It's either my gallbladder or my appendix has burst. Shit, I'm in trouble. So she came down the stairs. She's like, what are you doing on the couch? I said, I don't want to freak you out. You're pregnant. You got to get me to the ER. She's like, why? I said, something bad's happened. I think I'm dying. She's like, what do you mean? I said, the pain is, I can't explain it. You got to get me to the ER. We raced to the ER. I was really in pain. And I said, you got to give me a CT scan. She's like, why? And I said, I think my appendix burst. She said, sweetie, if your appendix burst, you wouldn't be having a conversation. I said, I have ulcerative colitis. I can take pain. Trust me on this. I think my appendix burst. She gave me a CT scan. She's like, oh my God, you've been in septic shock for 2 days.
Jeez.
So it was the colitis pain.
Yeah.
And I don't take pain pills.
Right.
So I just deal at managing. No one. I'm in Glendora. No one in my network wants to come. My wife calls my best friend from Huntington Beach. It's like 30 miles. He comes in 20 minutes. He goes, I don't care how many tickets I get. I got to get there. This guy drives from Barstow, which is an hour and a half away, shows up, double parks, literally looks at the scans. This is what he tells me. I swear to God, he's like, you're 50-50. My wife's like, what? He goes, yeah, you're really far gone. No one wanted to come. He goes, but I'm willing to wing it. This is what he says to my wife. My wife's
There's
pregnant.
a pep talk.
They're going to wing it. I go, what? Then he goes, but I'm going to have to take your colon out. I said, could you leave my colon in? He goes, you're rotted. Your stomach's rotted. So I'm like, all right. So I was like, well, just if you have to take it out, it's going to save my life. Take it out. I don't want a bag, but I'd rather you leave it in and I'll figure it out. I wake up 4 hours, 3.5 hours surgery, 4 hours later. My wife's crying. She never cries. And I'm like, what'd you do to her? He literally tells her, he nearly died. He's like a mess. He's never going to survive this. He literally tells my wife he's pregnant. Like, this guy has no bedside manner, right? This guy is like, he got me through the surgery.
So bless him. Bless him.
So I spent 6 to 8 days in the hospital, lost 50 pounds, couldn't walk. I was done. They removed 8 inches from my intestines, and I was bad. So what makes it worse is I can barely move around, and then my son comes 7 weeks premature. And I'm like, oh. So I was involved in 2 restaurants in New York, and I was like, they're going to implode if I'm not there, but I got to be there for my family. So I let them implode. I'm like, I got to just start from scratch. And it was really crazy. I went to the gym one day after like 5-6 months, and I couldn't do anything. So I was like, I was really freaking out. The year before, I'd won a men's physique contest, and I was like 194 pounds of muscle, and here I am 140 pounds. I can't move with stomach, and I couldn't hold anything in. I couldn't eat. I mean, I was dying. And I watched a woman run 100 miles on a video, and I just was like, I'd never run distance. I was a sprinter, and I was like, wait, how do you run 100 fucking miles? Like, who is this woman? So I have a very simplistic way of thinking. So if I see you do something, I go back to the start. So I'm like, okay, was she a track star? And I looked her up, and she wasn't. I was like, okay, and that's how my brain works. If she can do it, I can do it. That's it. What's her process? So I literally build a gym in my garage, and I go to my wife, I'm going to go push the baby and start getting fit again. She's like, okay, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to run a half marathon. She's like, what are you talking about? You don't run. I said, I've got to do it. This chick ran 100 miles. I've got to figure out how to run at least 13. So I prepared for the race, ran 13 miles. Then something triggered. I found a foundation. And then 12 months later, I ran 30 half marathons in 30 days with a hernia and broke a world record.
And that's it.
Yep.
And that's, your mindset, and Mike wrote a book, I encourage everybody, 7 Steps to an Unbreakable Mindset. It's a great read. One of my favorite parts is the inner critic. I think a lot of people that have suffered trauma, like you and I, and said some of the upbringings, face that inner critic quite often. I think it's one of the behaviors you talked about. What your internal dialogue, what you'll say to yourself, is no longer based on the narrative that you heard from others. You've created a narrative for yourself, which is so important, and it allowed you. You were able to draw on that to take this horrific set of circumstances and overcome it with a bunch of behaviors that led to you, setting a Guinness World Record for half marathons. And if you go on Mike's Instagram, you can see a video of it. He's got Orlando, strapped to him most of the time he's doing these workouts, and it's inspiring. I watched it. I felt like I just watched a Rocky movie because, I think you inspire others by your commitment to a set of behaviors that go along with the life you want, not the life someone else wants for you. This is the life you want for you. This is the life you want for your family. This is the life you want for your son, and those are the behaviors that you're engaged in, which I think, I hope to give everybody that listens to Overcome Out Loud that same chance to turn the light on in their lives, And so let's talk a second about Mind Focus Fuel, because, I'm new to our relationship. I got a sample of it. I've used it over the weekend. I've used it today at work. I'm amazed by the effects that it's had on, just my overall mood, my cognitive thinking, my energy level. So, in addition to the book, you've got now this supplement. I mean, just this guy's nonstop in terms of his his entrepreneurial spirit. And I remember I was joking with you. I sold sponges when I was 12 years old, door to door. So, when I got this stuff and I tried it and saw how good it was, I just jump on the bandwagon with you. So because I do love it and it's needed, and I want to talk about really specifically the focus of and ability of this to really serve people that are in recovery. Because, we're still, even when we remove substances, we're still chasing. And one of the things I love about this is the way you've designed it, the ingredients and the formula that you've put into this that's really sensitive to people in recovery. So can you talk about Mind Focus Fuel kind of, I know it was kind of birthed out of your own kind of gastrointestinal issues and your own need to fulfill that need. Talk about how you came up with it and talk a little bit about, the principles behind it and what it can do for us.
Well, being sober, obviously going through stomach surgery, I had to be very careful. I had to take some pain meds, obviously, through the initial part. They give you pain meds. I couldn't get it. I tried to do it naturally. You can't. But my stomach was rotted out. So I had to figure out, I didn't want to go on Zoloft and any kind of that. I mean, when you physically lose 50 pounds and you can't walk, you get depressed.
Yeah, right on.
I can't move.
Situational depression is real.
So I didn't want to go on those things. And what I discovered was these incredible supplements and people were sending me stuff and it was getting me sick. Because there's a lot of pre-workouts out there, but they're just good if you want to go lift weights, but they're not actually good for mental health. And when you look at bodybuilding to build the body and the sport of bodybuilding, the sport of bodybuilding is not a healthy sport. It's not about mental health. It's about aesthetically blowing your body up. But these guys get sick and they die young because it's not about being mindful and training correctly. So I was like, well, how do I create something? And I really tested myself out running the half marathons because I have to run fasted. And I realized that turmeric is such an incredible healing agent for inflammation and gut health. We don't get enough vitamin C. So I came up and I literally would measure it. All right, this is the funniest thing.
I call him the mad scientist, by the way.
As a kid, I dealt drugs. This is horrible, I know. So I know how to weigh stuff out.
Yeah, you do.
So my wife looks at me like, well, I got kicked out of school for dealing drugs, and now here I am making legal supplements. I know it sounds crazy, but you never know what's going to happen. So don't give up on yourself.
Scale version 2.0.
Exactly, right? So I measured a certain amount of turmeric. I realized 1,000 milligrams of turmeric you have to put 10 milligrams of pepper with it because you have to put pepper in it to expand in the stomach. 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C is going to give you a full daily dose of vitamin C. People don't get enough vitamin C. So they're the first two. Then I put in natural caffeine, 200 milligrams. Now, if you just drink coffee, you're going to get wired and jittery and you're going to crash. So you put in L-theanine with it. And L-theanine, the right dosage of L-theanine with caffeine, you won't spike too early. You'll just be elevated and it'll be in a really nice elevated feeling without crashing. So I worked that out by experimenting. And then two incredible supplements that actually help, they're precursors to spike the dopamine in the brain, are tyrosine and L and DL phenylalanine. So I put them together in a concoction. And I literally weighed stuff out myself and ran on it and felt incredible all day. And then I got a friend of mine who's an ex-addict and I said, I'm going to make up a potion for you and see what you think. Seriously. And he tried it. He goes, I don't know what this is, but I need it. I said, okay. And I gave it to another friend of mine and he was like, oh my God. And then I'm bold and I called someone that has a very big supplement line and I just said, I've got an ingredient. Would you help me make it? And the guy just, because I'm up at 4 a.m, I text him at 4 a.m. He responded at 4 a.m. Early bird catches the worm. I paid the lab. The lab sampled it and they went, you're on, this is gold. We'll make it. And I did a deal with the lab and now we've got our first product.
Yeah, it's called Mind Focus Fuel 2.0, Diamond Life Fuel. We're going to put a link up when we post the podcast so that you can go to it directly. I'm going to have a link to it on my website. We've actually started now to get the guys that come into our executive recovery program using this as an alternate to the energy drinks. I find, a lot of guys still chasing whether it's the big, 40-ounce mug of coffee from somewhere or the big gulp, the Monster and the other kind of energy drinks. But they crash, and I see a couple of them a day. They're still not getting satisfied. They're still crashing.
The problem is as well when you're looking at the Red Bulls and stuff. it's not good for your gut health. These supplements that I'm going to create, I will do a pre-workout next year.
Oh, good.
Which will still have the nitric oxide boosters. You're going to have better alanine, citrulline. That's what you want to get the pump, but we'll only have a little bit of caffeine, and we'll probably a little bit of turmeric and glutamine, and then you'll be able to stack them. Do you know what I mean? So I always go back to gut health. We'll make a branched chain amino acid. We're going to do a whey protein, and we're going to do a nighttime support supplement, which will have valerian root, chamomile, a little melatonin, 5-HTP, L-trophonine. It's a very important supplement, L-trophonine. What people don't realize is you take that at night, it spikes the serotonin while you're sleeping. So I've really I know my products.
What a great call.
Yeah. So I want to, there'll be probably 5 products altogether over the next couple of years, different flavors, and that'll be the company, but it's all about mental health. It's all about helping people. The best feeling for me the other day was, and ironically, you bumped into someone that knew me running.
I do. That's so funny.
There's a guy who's a vet, and I didn't know he followed me, and he's a really beautiful guy, and I see him every morning when I'm running, and I always say hi. And he bought the product, and I ship everything myself because I want to build the customer service, but I didn't know it was him. And he saw me, he said, "Oh, I bought the product." I was like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me? I wouldn't have shipped it. I see you every morning." And he's like, "Can I say something?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Mike, I struggle with my mental health. I'm a disabled vet." And he goes, "I got up this morning and I haven't exercised in 5 years." And he goes, "I felt so good and I've exercised." I give it to my postman.
I saw him ripping that out.
Yeah,
The other
and
day.
I give it to my postman. He hasn't exercised in years. He gets up at 3 a.m. to exercise and takes it twice a day. And I'm not telling people what to do, but I know what works.
That's right.
I wouldn't run 10 miles a day pushing a stroller naturally in my 40s after stomach surgery if I didn't know what I was taking. I'm doing something right. You can't fudge 300, 400 miles away. Yeah, you can't run 10 miles a day and then show up for your family and your clients if you're fudging it.
You can't. And,
You know what I mean?
it's been great. Like I said, I had it over the weekend when I was exercising, and then today to come into work, and the feeling it's really powerful, and the lack of, you kind of, when I had those runs with other supplements or the energy drinks, you feel the crash coming on, and you're ready to take a nap, and it's been so nice just to feel naturally elevated in a state of kind of feeling effective and productive. So I'm excited to have it. I'm really, beyond anything, really grateful to have met you and to have you come in today and to be sharing now the executive recovery program with you. You're going to be our interventionist. So when families need help, Mike's an interventionist. He's a life coach. He's really, really active in helping people, and I'm super glad to have him in my life and part of my team. And so thanks for coming out and overcoming out loud and giving other people a chance to do the same, brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap.